I always make the mistake at the beginning of responding to debate instead of just reading what I've prepared, and yet I find myself compelled to respond to the debate again. On the one side of the House, we have the opposition talking about the problem of inflation and talking about spending more to tackle the problem of inflation. Do the opposition not realise that one of the principal causes of inflation is when we inject more money into the economy? And the more times government injects more into the economy, the more inflation increases. And it is a balance between government spending and inflation increasing. It's a basic economic principle. You can go back to the French Revolution, you can go back to Weimar Republic. You have to balance government spending with inflation. And on the other hand, we have Deputy Durkan here in the House talking about fiscal corrections as a result of too much spending. Of course, Deputy Durkan leaves out the fact that all of the correction wasn't made by Fine Gael. It was made first and foremost by the Irish people, but 2/3 of it were made in advance of Fine Gael ever coming into government. And where Fine Gael went wrong, and I think what the difference between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael is that all of the small projects in this budget, the small projects that really help people, that really have a real impact on people's lives, they need to be the priority. They are the priority in this budget, and they've been absent from previous budgets. And despite the attempts to suggest that it's a tired, out-of-date, exhausted government, I tell you, there's nothing exhausted about Anne Rabbitte or Mary Butler or Stephen Donnelly or Norma Foley, because for many of us in Fianna Fáil, this is the first real opportunity we've had to inject our priorities, our choices into a budget. Certainly last year was COVID, and I think it was understandable that it was COVID. And for me, education, disadvantaged and special needs, for me, was one of the primary priorities that I had, and I know many other people at the Fianna Fáil Parliamentary Party last week had. Speaker after speaker talking about the impact of higher education, of special needs, of disadvantage, and of many of our schools. So Budget 2022 was a record priority commitment for higher quality and inclusive education. The budget delivered for schools in disadvantaged areas and expanded the investment in special education to its highest amount in the history of the state. The DESH programme received a 20% increase in funding and will be extended to more schools, and DESH Urban Band 1 schools will receive further targeted funding. And I know the difference that will make to schools in my community. In places like Ballymun and Finglas, DESH schools do a fantastic job with some of the most disadvantaged children in our country and in some of the most challenging circumstances. Expanding the DESH programme ensures that as many children as possible who are at risk of educational disadvantage will benefit from targeted supports. And the programme for government commitment to reduce class sizes is continued to be delivered, with an extra 350 teachers to further reduce the pupil-teacher ratio, and that this improvement is also extended to DESH schools, unlike previous years. I particularly welcome the investment in special education. Over 900 special education teachers will be provided alongside nearly 1,100 SNAs who work both in special education and in mainstream. That's 2,000 people to give those children the extra helping hand they need. My area has a shortage of special education and ASD classes, and I regularly speak with Minister Butler, Minister Madigan and Minister Foley, and with the families who are impacted by those shortages, and by the waiting lists, and by those people who are travelling large distances to get to those schools. These children deserve a school place in their own community, to go to a school with their sibling and their neighbour, and the difference it makes to these families when classes and places are available in their local area is huge. Minister Abbott recently met with a number of parents in my area campaigning for more places, and Minister Foley recently opened a new ASD class in my constituency in Ballymun in Virgin Mary Girls' School. The benefit of that inclusive approach to education delivers for the whole school community. In fact, it delivers for all of our community. The funding in the budget for extra teachers, SNAs and administrative principals will allow more schools to open classes with confidence, and they will receive and support that support. And I'd also like to thank Ministers Foley and Minister Madigan and Minister Rabbitte for the commitment to this issue and for working with me and with the parents concerned. And I look forward to more classes opening and more local children receiving a school place nearer their home. That has to be a priority for this government as we go forward. In higher education, student grants have also been increased for the first time in a decade. Not since Fianna Fáil was in power have the higher education grants been increased, and the contribution for fees for PLCs have also been abolished. That's 10,000 students alongside the establishment of an apprenticeship office. Students will also obviously benefit from the half-price public transport scheme, and I think that's a very welcome measure to address both the cost of living for them and their families, but also our climate action targets. Higher and further education will be critical to our recovery from this pandemic in providing the skills we need to tackle the housing crisis, and I welcome the wide range of measures in this budget which will help the sector to expand. This is a budget which supports all sectors of our education system with a focus on the most disadvantaged communities, and I make no apologies for that. With a focus on the children with special education needs, and I make no apologies for that. It continues my party's history as a party that recognises education as the foundation of our success as a country and demonstrates a clear commitment to a system that delivers for all learners. It follows the example set by us in our party that Donogh O'Malley set many years ago and by the many people who have followed them.